We're ready to go.
Thank you. It is 7 p.m. and time to call the first November meeting of the Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission to order on this unusual Wednesday meeting. Will staff please note the presence of a quorum?
Ms. Berkman?
Here.
Mr. Deck?
Here.
Mr. Horkay?
Here.
Mr. Johns?
Here.
Dr. Kelleher?
Here.
Mr. Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz?
Here.
Ms. Boljaric?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item is approval of minutes of our October 17th meeting. I assume everybody's had an opportunity to read them. Is there a motion to accept these minutes into our records?
Motion to approve the October 17th, 2022 APC minutes as written.
Thank you. Do we
Second
have
that.
a second? We have a second. Motion by Dr. Kelleher, second by Andre Maui. Will staff please call the roll?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item next, will staff please review the rules of procedure as required for tonight's meeting agenda?
Yes, so tonight we have no public hearings. So for the items of business, the meeting will have the following structure. The department will summarize the petition and highlight any changes or modifications since the item was last before the Plan Commission. The department will also describe what action, if any, is necessary to be taken. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present any changes, and the Plan Commission can then act upon the petition. For our general rules of conduct, we ask that you please not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, we ask you please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time, and again, if you must answer them, please quietly exit the room. If you do come up to the podium to speak as a petitioner, please make sure the light is on. So the mic is on as indicated by the green light, and please, Plan Commission members, mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, we have two items in our consent agenda this evening. Is there a motion to approve these items?
Motion to approve?
We have a motion from Victor McCarty. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Matt Deck. Will staff please call the roll?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving along, we have one item of business in front of us tonight. Westfield Yard PUD, petition 2208-PUD-16. We should all be pretty familiar with this tonight, but there are a few little new wrinkles. If staff could give us a presentation, and then if petitioner wants to go through their presentation, we'll move on to that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just for brief introduction, and for the record, Kevin Todd of Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is the Westfield Yard proposal, a little bit under 11 acres in size near the intersection of Gray Road and south of State Road 32, currently zoned AGSF1, and would allow for up to 72 townhome dwelling units in this project. The project had its public hearing at the August 1st Plan Commission meeting and has had two subsequent workshop meetings with the Plan Commission, and is before you this evening seeking a recommendation. John Dobashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger is here this evening, and I believe plans to make a brief presentation highlighting the revisions of the proposal that have been made over the last several months. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Dobashewitz.
Thank you and good evening. Again, for the record, John Dobashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner, Fisher Homes. Amanda Webb, and as well as Nate Hollander are here from Fisher. as well as Rick Lawrence, an attorney with our office. As staff indicated, we're requesting this evening a favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission onto the City Council for this PUD. I wanted to go through the adjustments and modifications with you briefly and see if there are additional questions in advance of your consideration this evening. This is the revised plan that Kevin had up on the screen when he was discussing the changes. There are a total of 72 home sites, which is a reduction of 3 home sites. I'll go over the modification regarding that in 1 second. It's a combination of front-load townhomes as well as alley-loaded townhomes. The alley-loaded product is generally on the inside, what I'll call the inside of this curved street here. So these are alley-loaded townhomes with the fronts that face the street and/or common areas. There are front-loaded townhomes where the front door and the garage are on the same side of the dwelling along the south perimeter, west perimeter, and north perimeter of the real estate. And this gives you an idea of the architecture that's included in the ordinance, which requires substantial compliance and 4-sided architecture with masonry on all 4 sides of the dwellings. This just gives you an idea of the one of the 2 products. It's the alley-loaded product. These start out at approximately 2,100 square feet in size. This is the front-load product with here you see the front door on the same side as the garage door in the site floor plan. And these start out at approximately 2,400 square feet and range from 2,400 to 2,500 square feet in area. That's an adjustment that was made previously to the ordinance where it called for a minimum of 1,500 square feet in area. The most substantial modification that was made after the last meeting that was held at City Services was that the groupings of buildings, this was the plan before that meeting, which was for 3 6-unit buildings along this perimeter. There was a request made to see if we could further break that up to create some additional openings along that south perimeter, and we've done that. That's resulted in a total of 5 buildings. So there are 4 3-unit buildings and 1 4-unit building. Again, here as it's indicated, 3 and 4-unit buildings, a total of 5, 20-foot separation between those buildings. And as a result, that's reduced by 2. So there's, rather than 18 homes along that south perimeter, there are now only 16. And the dog park's been located to this space right here, adjacent to that run along the Midland, where previously it was up in this space here, as I'm showing here on the screen. This is an additional exhibit. We had prepared previously some examples of bird's eye perspectives and aerial views of that buffer that's along this site. There is a 10-foot tree preservation area that's required along the south perimeter, and that's in addition to supplemental plantings, which would include the evergreen trees that you see behind that, as well as some additional ornamental trees that would be in addition to the tree preservation along that perimeter that would also be planted along the north perimeter of the real estate where there isn't tree preservation. So that's why you see that. So in the foreground here, this is the trail. This is a photograph that's supplemented with these additional plantings, and you can see the idea of the existing trees as well as the supplemental plantings that would be added along that perimeter. There was one question in the ordinance on page 5 of the ordinance under section 8.1D. It talks about the trail side tree preservation, and the last sentence of that section indicates that existing trees in this area shall not be disturbed unless required by the city, or for drainage and utility installation. We'll eliminate that sentence from the section. We'll avoid that 10-foot tree preservation area on the south perimeter, of course, with the exception of the openings that would have the sidewalk connections that connect over to the Midland in 2 locations. This is a cross-section that the commission had seen previously, other than there's been one adjustment made to it. Homes within the adjacent subdivision are between 60 and 100 feet from the property line. Then there's the property that the trail sits on. This identifies the 10-foot buffer and then a 20-foot drainage easement behind the site. And then the patio for that dwelling is approximately 32 feet to the property line, and then another 8 feet, because that's the depth of the deck or the patio, to the main dwelling. This identifies that those dwellings along that south perimeter are going to be below the grade of the existing trail. If you've walked out that site, you've seen some other locations where typically you would build up that edge, so you'd pull back stormwater to the north. And because of the site conditions here and the topography, they're actually able to recess that or lower it a little bit so that those 3-story dwellings, they've done as much as they can, so they're 2 to 3 foot lower from an elevation standpoint than the existing trail, rather than raised up higher than the trail, which is consistent with some other locations throughout the vicinity. Regarding amenities, when this was originally filed, there wasn't specificity added to the amenities that would be provided. In this vicinity, where we've mentioned that there'll be a dog park, that would be a minimum of 1,000 square feet in area. It would also include a seating area, and there would be an ornamental fence as illustrated in this drawing, an example of which. There is planned 3 connections to the Midland Trail, one at the dog park, one between buildings. It's either going to be here or in this location. That decision has been made. And then the third connection is the existing sidewalk that comes up from the south. That would be extended north. It would be an 8-foot asphalt path as it extends north. The sidewalk that's to the south of the Midland today was constructed at a time when that standard was not an 8-foot asphalt path, but that asphalt path would extend across the entire frontage of the site. In addition to the dog park and the connectivity to the trail, there are planned 2 landscape seating areas, which would be adjacent to the pond, as well as the third landscape seating area that would be in this vicinity. We've got a detail of that I'll show you here momentarily. This is a blow-up of the dog park details, trash can, dog waste station, 4-foot aluminum fence, 1,000 square foot minimum area, as well as a few parking spots that you'll see right here that are supplemental and typically for guest parking, but I suppose if you lived up here, you could drive your car down here and access that spot, but there's also sidewalks along the perimeter streets. Again, regarding the path along the Gray Road frontage, the connection to the Midland, the seating areas, and then the project signage that exists along the openings to the trail, as well as the entrances along Gray Road. And then these additional supplemental exhibits that give you an idea of what's anticipated for the seating areas, the number of which here that was added, the style and type of seating that would be included in those two spaces. And that all can be found under page 6 of the PUD under section 10.2 regarding amenities. The last exhibit we provided to staff and have also provided to Public Works. It shows that the planned cross-section for the street, it shows that there's adequate space in front of those front-loading units to accommodate parking in front of those. And then when you have a situation where there's the front-load unit or the side of that unit, that would be set, could be set closer to the street, but it still has room for utilities. I'll jump back here and I'll show you. That would be a situation like, as shown, would be right here where there's driveways here adjacent that are front load that have that 20-foot depth that would accommodate cars to be parked not only in the garage but in front of the house. And then the side here that would be adjacent to the side of the dwelling, or the situation here where there's a front that faces the street. There's not a 20-foot setback there. It's a little bit closer to the street right away. So that completes our presentation. We'd be glad to address questions that the commission may have. Again, we believe that these modifications address those last few comments that were received at the last workshop meeting regarding the positioning along the trail and the product accommodations. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments for petitioner or staff? I think we've all been really impressed.
So thank you, John and Fisher Holmes, for the adjustments that you all have made. I still have some concerns with the proposal. I certainly appreciate the work that Fisher Homes does in our community. And, you know, you do a very nice job, so thank you for participating here. My issue is that this is the wrong use for this particular land. It's in our comprehensive plan as commercial. We received information at our last meeting that we have about 17 years of inventory to build out townhomes. So we have those two factors here, and this is one of the few remaining parcels really along State Road 32 as you move east from the downtown. And so I think for me, I would like to wait and have commercial on this parcel. I know there's been some issues regarding the gas line and the access to the parcel, but I'm really concerned, given that the parcel to the west of this is zoned general office, that if this all goes residential, we're going to lose all that commercial space in the city, which we really need to have commercial in those designated areas. I also did a little research and looked up this gas easement as it travels to the southwest, and it crosses 421, and they have been able to put commercial on both sides of it. So I'd just like to dig a little deeper on this particular location and land, for me personally as a commissioner, to try to have commercial on this. And I'm not opposed to perhaps a mixed-use application where you have retail or something on the bottom floor and perhaps some condos or apartments above that. I think that might be using some creativity with the parcel, but committing this all to residential just isn't something I can support, given the objectives we've been given from the mayor and the council to increase the commercial tax base. Thanks.
If I might, I don't know if we can pull up the staff, I don't know if you can pull up the location map, if we can just. That's good. Oh, does it? Okay, great. So this is the parcel we're talking about. It's approximately 13 acres in size. This is the adjacent parcel that's on GO. This is Bonterra, where these 6 parcels were zoned GO, and then there's commercial to the east of that where the dentist office is behind the credit union. And so last year, approximately this time, when Bonterra was approved by the Plan Commission, the plan for that real estate really bifurcated the commercial development. It took ground, Bonterra was originally zoned 100% commercial, and now you've got the 2 outlots out front here for commercial development where none of that area had developed over the preceding time frame. But we've got the commercial where the credit union is in Feldman, I think it's Feldman, Friedman. The dentist office is located there, and then you had commercial development that was converted to the townhomes for Bonterra, approximately 150 of which on that real estate, and then you've got the intervening GO parcel, and then this piece that's AGSF1 today, the 13 acres. Some of the challenges, as you mentioned, for development of the real estate included the crossing of the pipeline easement on such a small parcel. I'm familiar with the parcels along 421, worked at the city of Carmel when those areas were developed, and it was a challenge developing those parcels of real estate that did that, but they were surrounded by much more acreage that things could be spread out, and the situation here doesn't exist because you've got the smaller parcel. When Bonterra was approved without cross-connectivity to either the east or west, so that really cut the commercial frontage in half and doesn't create a situation where there can be a planned development for commercial in that space between the woods, if you're familiar with where that is, where the intersection is. I think it's, can't remember the north-south street, but right at the intersection there on 32, the woods.
Shady Nook.
Shady Nook over to Gray Road. The other thing that is on the north side here, there's a large subdivision, and the access into Bonterra is right directly across from that. However, as part of the Bonterra review and approval, there wasn't viewed a need to cross-connect that over to the east. So this parcel now becomes landlocked with a single cut onto State Road 32 for access, and the parcel over here is crisscrossed by the pipeline easement, and you don't have any cross-connectivity, which is typically a hallmark that we see on the east-west side of the community by Portillo's and all those others. There's this frontage road, the example that was maintained, that was kind of, I know those things were considered as part of Bonterra, but the decision nonetheless was made to take that commercial real estate out of inventory into residential and eliminate the cross-connectivity that really created a critical mass of commercial, or the potential for commercial development in this space. I'm just explaining that because that's why we're here today, with the thought of we have to come up with a solution for this real estate, which is including commercial still along the frontage, opportunities here that exist for the office here and office here along State Road 32, but something on the backside that makes sense because we've lost that ability to have that critical mass of commercial with past decisions that have been made. I'm not making any judgment on that. I'm just making an observation that that's the condition that's left today for development of this piece. Thank you.
I guess the difference for me, John, is that you have Gray Road, which is going to be a main thoroughfare. I mean, it's in the thoroughfare plan to be a parkway. So you have access to the east for this parcel.
Mm-hmm. Other commissioners, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I
think he
guess
is.
if no one else is going to jump in, I'll jump in. John and I have talked about this on several occasions, and I actually drove out and took another look at the property today just to remind myself before this meeting. I've got several concerns with this PUD. 4 of them have to do with basically APC issues. The first is that with the widening of State Road 32 that's going to be happening, and the planned Duke substation immediately to the east, and the office zone property immediately to the west, I think that this property would be better served, as Kirsten has said, for commercial/office development, as indicated in the comprehensive plan. Secondly, during the last 12 months, and certainly this petitioner is, Fisher Homes does a wonderful job of building homes. But during the last 12 months, we've had several townhouse PUDs presented to the council, and most of those we've requested and required them to do 2-story townhouses. And I understand that Fisher's Homes does not have that product available, but I'm concerned that a 3-story would create a tunneling effect along the trail. In addition to that, I would say, number 3, while we don't have specific trail guidelines, and hopefully we will have an ordinance in the near future that addresses some of those, I am kind of concerned with the trail treatment, and I just don't see anything there that would add value or add interest to residents using the trail. 4th thing is I appreciate the effort to put some amenities in, but in my way of thinking, when you've got 72, 75 townhouses, you need more than 3 park benches and a dog walking facility. And those are my APC considerations. But unfortunately, I also wear a council hat here, okay? And that gives me some additional concerns that in some ways supersede my APC concerns. We recently received a rooftop study, as Kristen alluded to. That study says we've got 3,663 multifamily units that have already been approved and have not yet been built in Westfield. That study also says that if we use the average of 210 units per year takedown, that would take us 15.8 years to build out what's already been approved. Now, I suspect 210 is a 5-year average, and I think it may be too small going forward, and maybe it should be larger, but still, whether it's 15.8 years or 12.6 years or 10.9, there still is a tremendous amount of inventory that we've already accumulated. So then I've got to think back and say that Mayor Cook has come before this body. He's also come before the council. He's asked us to consider how large we want Westfield to be. And by that, what he's really saying is how much more residential business do we want to add at this time? We all understand that commercial is highly desirable, but how much more residential do we need at this point in time? I would just suggest to you that I'm only one person on the council, but from my conversations with other council members, I don't see an appetite at the council level to add additional multifamily units at this point in time. And I suspect that it will be a very hard upward push to try to get this approved next week. I do think that there is an opportunity in Westfield, many opportunities for infill, if you will, multifamily units that could be considered by the council. And certainly if some of those came in were with just wonderful, super great projects that are in the top 10% of what we've seen in the last 10 years, I think those would be considered by the council, possibly approved. But I don't think that given this location and what's presented here, I don't see a way that it's going to make it through the council. But again, my opinion.
Thank you.
First and foremost, I want to thank you guys for having patience, fourth time here, and really appreciated all the changes that you guys have done. I think we have a better product than when it first was initially introduced, but nonetheless, I think this is a great infill project. To the east is residential, to the west is just on the overside of Bonterra is going to be residential. We have the general office in between Bonterra and this. So given the restraints with the pipeline, I think that this is the best use for this land. I think the product looks great as well, and I don't see how there would be a tunneling effect on the Midland. In fact, if you look at Google Maps or if you even go out and visit the property, you can see the backyards of everyone to the south. So if people have concern about buffering to the north, well, there's not buffering to the south, so let's play fair on both sides here. And same way when you go out to 161st, once the trees grow up, you're not going to see much of anything from ground level. So I appreciate y'all's attention to detail here, and the fact of the matter is this is zoned AGFS1. If it was zoned for commercial, I would be all for it. I would love it. But then that would be a whole different process. This is what's in front of us here today. And again, I thank you for your patience, and I think we should move forward with this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Victor and I reached for the mic at the same time, and he was quicker than me, but I think we're going to say a lot of the same things, maybe a slight twist. So you've heard me say this before up here, I defer to the expertise of a petitioner to know if the market can sustain the product that they're offering. I'll never claim to be able to determine the viability of a project better than the ones who are going to be on the line to make it happen. And if we answer the mayor's question in a way that makes us all determine that we want to put a lid and stop based on the inventory that we've got, then we should do that and let petitioners know not to get this far. I don't know that we've had enough discussions where any of us can say that that's the decision. I think we each probably have differing opinions, and we can probably even guess at each opinion right now, but we've never given an indication. So to me, the market question is still the developer's responsibility if they think that they can support it, and then we decide whether it's the use that belongs there. As far as the use, I respect, in particular, Kristen bringing up the comp plan. I think that's a great thing to continue to look at. We've done a great job keeping that in mind. But the way I was looking at this one, and John said this way better, he uses words for a living and he's an expert in his field, but I was looking at it from I was thinking context, and John, you said critical mass. Same thing to me as far as it's a little bump if it was commercial versus look at all the residential that's around here chopping this up already. I just didn't see that this had, and now I'm just going to steal your words, the critical mass to make it a strong contender for commercial with the constraints of the pipeline and things like, and the trail really is a constraint on that too, because if I was using that section of the trail, or even neighbor to the south, I would much rather look at these townhouses when the leaves fall, or when there's gaps in the trees, whatever, than what would inevitably be the backside of businesses, because you would have to front them to the access, probably on Gray Road. So, all things considered, I am in favor of this particular use at this location, and I think as far as all the actual product, Fisher's been very responsive and has been adapting based on all the things that we've requested and suggested, so I too am in favor of moving it forward.
Wanted to jump back in real quick also, just because we're bringing up the rooftop study tonight. Yeah, I think that's a new issue. If we wanted to talk about that, it should have been a few meetings ago. Nonetheless, though, it was presented at council. I think all of us could have been able to watch it there. I hear from many realtors that there is, even though we have a lot of rooftops approved, there's a rooftop shortage because of the amount of people that are wanting to move to our community. And developers are just not able to keep up with demand. With this being, once again, an infill project of now going down from 75 to 72 townhomes, that does not have an immense impact on, I know a lot of people, including myself, have concern of impact on our schools. That is not the type of folks this development's going to attract. It's not going to be attracting multi-kid families, more so for that either first-time home buyer, we've talked about this before for previous meetings, first-time home buyer, or the retirees. And that's why I think this is a great development, because I love seeing developments where both of those generations, the newer and the older, can blend together. And there's a great amenity being the Midland right here for both age groups that can go down to Kroger or whatever happens on the Noblesville side in the future. So again, I think this is the best use for this land.
I just wanted to bring up what Andre said. I think he used the specific phrase, letting a petitioner get this far. It's the fourth time they've been in front of us. And to think that we're going to tell them, and I know it's been mentioned, but to tell them now, it's not the right use. We really need to wait for commercial. I can't imagine Fisher Homes ever wanting to come back to Westfield again after going through that entire process and then hearing this. I mean, we brought this up at the workshop meeting. You know, I know Jenny brought it up, I believe, about, commercial, and I thought we had all decided that, yeah, we're too far down the road to change and to say no, and we need to continue to wait for commercial. I mean, yeah, we'd all love commercial. But folks, there's a bigger problem here in Westfield. Our commercial pipeline is practically empty. And that's a much bigger question that we have to ask ourselves as to why. So I would hate then to take this petitioner, drag him through 4 meetings here in front of the APC and then say, nah, we're just going to continue to wait for commercial, but thanks for your 4 times in front of us. I will say, however, though, I'm also concerned that if we do have enough yes votes up here, we've already had a city councilor say, I don't think we're going to have the support on the city council. And you're going to need that. So that's concerning. So, however this turns out, Fisher Homes, if this doesn't get put through, I am so sorry this wasn't made clear at the very first meeting that we wanted to wait for commercial, that we drug you through this, and now we're going to, we're going to continue to wait. That's not fair to you guys.
Other comments? Cindy, perhaps?
I just wanted to say that I think I've been pretty open about my thoughts on this and my concerns with the project, which still remain, unfortunately. I do appreciate changes that have been made, but my primary concerns, especially with the 3-story on the Midland, especially when we did make Bonterra do 2-story along the Midland, and the fact that that issue is not resolved, the 3 feet, below grade is not enough to offset that for me. So that is still a major consideration moving forward for me. Thanks, John.
May I just add something really quick?
Sure.
Just to kind of respond to Matt's comments. Cindy brought up that this should be commercial in the workshop, in the first workshop. And I appreciated that because I will admit in the introduction, I missed it. And the workshop has been put into place for us to share information and to have a conversation to make things better. And this was brought up during the first workshop by Cindy. Additionally, she talked about the thoroughfare of Gray Road being on our thoroughfare plan as a planned bigger road. So both of those aspects were brought up and discussed. The petitioner then decided to come back for a second workshop, correct? I mean, that was something you asked for,
Is that a
correct?
question?
Yes, it is.
We were back in front of the Plan Commission for a second workshop.
And it was something that you wanted to do.
We came back to the second Plan Commission because there was a desire to see not 3 stories along the Midland, and Fisher attempted to address that through the installation and inclusion of single-family detached dwellings.
But you requested to come back, right? You requested to come back to the workshop.
So I
To a second workshop.
apologize, I should have started out with yes.
Okay.
And the reason was, as I described.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. And you had the single-family homes along there because it was a big concern, still having the 3-story. I just want to retrack the history of this correctly, that we had a long discussion at the last workshop regarding this. I brought in extra evidence on how far we are going to the west from the downtown trying to have commercial on State Road 32, and how deep we're trying to have commercial along State Road 32. And John, I know you weren't there. I don't know if you watched the tape, but I went through, I actually did measurements of how far down from our city center and just had that conversation. Do we really want to use residential in this space? So I just want it on record that this has been mentioned all along. This is not the first time commercial land use has been brought up in a conversation regarding this particular project. So I just wanted to add that to the record.
Understood. I would agree that this meeting isn't the first time it's come up. And I think your recollection of the
You're
past,
agreeing with me.
I think your recollection of the past committee meeting, I guess, I understand.
That's our job, right? I mean, everybody has a different perspective. That's what makes the commission great. We have 9 different perspectives and how land should be used in our community. That's what is the strength of this body, and I, respect everybody else and what they're saying, but I just feel like we have to be fact-driven in how this has all been presented, and I think that was presented to Fisher as something that was under consideration from the start. Yeah, wasn't sprung on you tonight, so.
I don't know what you would define as the start, but it wasn't sprung on us tonight, and I agree with you that everyone has a different view of that, and I respect everybody's view on it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, John.
You have some things to say, Ginny? Or no? That'd be at first if you don't.
No. This has been difficult. I think for me at least, and I think I mentioned this at the workshop, that I think I fell down on my job as a Plan Commission member when I approved Bonterra, not paying more attention to the comprehensive plan. As it turns out, even though we did approve that, we probably didn't do as good a job as we could have because there's no frontage road and no connection, as John has so pointed out. So I think we could have done a better job with that one, and maybe then this would not be as much of an issue as John points out for commercial development. All of these things combined make me concerned that maybe when a project comes in to us, the first thing we do is look at the comp plan and decide, is this an appropriate use? It seems to me that we have kind of fallen into a pattern of, oh, that's not bad, let's see if we can fix it. And what happens then is, then if we get down the road and we find out, well, we really didn't think this was appropriate in the first place. What we've done is spent a lot of time wasting other people's time. I know that you normally, most petitioners, and I'm assuming you are the same, go to city council members early on to kind of get their input. I don't know what that was, but from hearing John and Cindy, I'm assuming that their input early on was, we really would prefer commercial, but I can't speak for them. So again, I don't think that's something new. I think that the product is lovely. I think the four-sided architecture and the brick and things are wonderful. I think Fisher does a great job. And I bounce back between yes or no on this, partly because I feel like we've gone at this a long time. But then I have to decide, okay, maybe that wasn't correct, but in the end, I have to make a decision that I think is best for planning in Westfield, not make a decision because I feel bad because I didn't say something sooner. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, like Jenny said, this has been a tough one because of the circumstances from the beginning. I think she mentioned, looking at, is it an appropriate use at the beginning? And at least the way I look at this, when you look at everything but the comp plan, it is appropriate in the sense that you've got residential, at least on the south and the east, and you don't touch 32, where obviously there would be more commercial. I appreciate the changes that have been made, the refinements that have made it a much better project on a very tricky piece of property. I don't like going away from commercial with anything, with any parcel, but this one seems problematic to develop commercially, at least any time in the near future. I do understand the sentiments, though. I think it's going to be very difficult to get that property to the west, commercial, flowing through, driving through this neighborhood to get there. It's just a tough one. I think what they've done the best. Fisher has done a great job with the refinements and revisions and the thought and creativity that's been put into this because it is so tricky. The only question is whether we forego the maybe commercial potential way out into the future. And that's what I've been debating all along.
Can I ask a question? And
Sure.
I guess this is as much for staff as it is the Plan Commission. When we did the comp plan and when we talk about zoning, we kind of talk about areas being appropriate for certain uses. And we didn't break it down into individual parcels. And again, what I kind of see us doing here is saying we're going to address this parcel, not the area. And if we do that too many times, we're going to say that parcel is difficult to develop when indeed it's part of a larger area that maybe when in totality is developed, is done appropriately. So I agree with John and other people that this may be a difficult parcel to develop as retail. But if we look at the whole corridor, and I take the blue parcel to the next, if this were developed, say the northwest portion of this parcel we're talking about, north of the pipeline and west of the pipeline, if this were part of the blue, the general office, that would be a lovely parcel for some type of commercial. And maybe it won't work here, and obviously we can't get somebody who has a parcel somewhere else to sell it or combine it, but that's really not our issue, I don't think, as Planning Commission members. And I just have a concern that in the future we look at a parcel not as this is it, unless it's a landlocked parcel and it's a definite infill project, where there's something else, but that we look at it more as a whole, because otherwise every parcel is going to have certain difficulties if we take it as an individual parcel. And that may be true if it's surrounded by development already, but if it's not, that's a concern I would like us to think about in the future at least.
And I agree with your sentiments there wholeheartedly. Just as you were speaking, the one thought that popped in my head is, do we want to, and again, this is just a general question, do we want to hold one petitioner or landowner hostage because of something that might be a possibility next to them? So that's just a overall question, but I completely understand where you're coming from.
And I think we hold all landowners hostage to some extent because we have zoning. Everybody, and we have a comprehensive plan, and that, in your words, I don't like hostage, but it does kind of hold people to a standard. It's not like we can say, gee, I'm sorry, you can do whatever you want because that's what you want to do. That's what zoning kind of prevents. It says there's a bigger picture here, so, but anyway, I'll shut up because I've already said too much.
No problem. I don't have a crystal ball in front of me. I can't determine in any way, shape, or form that the parcel to the west that's zoned for office use is a foregone conclusion that it will never be an office, that it's going to have to go to residential because of this. That may be the way it does play out, but I have no way of knowing that today. And I think that decision for whomever it is that's doing this years into the future is years into the future. And I sit here looking at the GIS map during a lot of our meetings, and it's been, I've been zooming around it, looking at what else is along the pipeline, looking at what's to the east in the Noblesville area. I can't see their actual zoning like I can see our own. But I think for a lot of the reasons that have been discussed, this is a parcel that we have something that's in front of us that we need to make a decision on, and I prefer to not try to guess at the future and make a decision based on what we think might happen somewhere else. I think Fisher has presented us a really great plan. They've worked very diligently to address our concerns. I think the parcel will work quite nicely with it. And at some point, it's going to be developed. I think this is a development that I can support. And all these things that are around it are just not something I'm going to factor into a decision tonight because I just don't know what I don't know. So I think we all need to pay attention to these, as you've brought up, Dr. Kelleher, that we need to look at a broader view, and it needs to start at the very beginning. Counselors, when it's up for its initial presentation, need to raise those kinds of concerns. The purpose of doing that is to get the high-level immediate concerns addressed and determine quite quickly, do you really need to continue, or is this something that ought to stop dead in its tracks right now and that we can take our cues from however it is that council reacts to that? So we can have further comments, but we have this in front of us for a recommendation tonight, and at some point we're going to need to stop the discussion and get a motion for one recommendation or another. Any other comments, Andre? You look like you might have thoughts. If not, that's fine. Anybody down here? They don't look like they're ready to say anything. You've had your say. Is anybody compelled to offer a motion on what our recommendation to council should be?
I'll make a motion to make a positive recommendation for item 228 PUD 16, forwarding that to the city council.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion for a favorable recommendation from Matt Deck and a second by Andre Maui. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
No.
Dr. Kelleher?
No.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spillier?
No.
Ms. Bertman?
No.
Motion carries 5-4.
Thank you for your consideration this evening.
Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks from my perspective here as well for your time and effort, and we'll see where this goes on a future Monday night with council. Closing these tabs out. We have no public hearing items. All other items listed on our agenda are continued and working their way through the process to be heard at some future date. This now takes us down to reports and comments. Any general comments from Plan Commission members?
We got a couple. A lot of good points brought up. In particular, I was thinking about what Jeannie said in terms of getting the comp plan discussion up front, maybe in the context of surrounding parcels, because once we create jack-o'-lantern teeth, and I feel like we kind of been doing this across here, it sets a course, and it's pretty tough then to say, yeah, we want that tooth to look different. I agree with that. It feels like it's also, that's the secret sauce. If we could figure that out, we'd be magical, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to get us there, but I just wanted to emphasize, valid point, and I hope we can figure out how to do that.
Many, many years ago, when I was having my one-year term as a town councilor, and we were discussing some of these kinds of things, we actually had a discussion, a few of us, about trying to lay this out based on parcels, the map for the comp plan, instead of having these kind of meandering broad lines that are too much lines, and I've continued to kind of lobby that we need to have these blended in a more gradual fashion, but trying to figure out how to actually craft a comp plan to go parcel by parcel by parcel by, it was tough enough to do it the way we did it. And that just was never going to work. So, you know, as desirable as it might be to try to be able to do that.
And frankly, if we had that, we'd be fighting against it all the time too. I mean, it's impossible to foresee that much. That's why I really do think that that's the secret sauce. It's a secret for a reason. I don't think we figured it out yet. The one other thing that I wanted to comment on, and the comment is really for the council, and it's not at Cindy and Mike, but I'm going to say this comment through you so that everybody gets to hear that. It's concerning during an APC discussion to hear whether there is or is not support at the council level, because while I understand the council is not bound to any recommendation that comes out of this group, if we can sit here during this discussion and already know how it's going to come out elsewhere, or imply maybe one way or the other, then what are we doing here each night that we're here, and all the prep time that we do leading up to it? So I want to make that comment to kind of throw out there, what's the purpose of this commission, if not to have these discussions and give a recommendation that at least gets a lot of credence and respect?
I'd like to at least comment on that, because I agree with you, Andre, to a great extent. First thing, I do want to think we need to understand that when the petitioner comes before us, there should not be a presumption of approval. All right. I mean, he's making a petition, and it might get approved, it might not get approved. All right. The second thing, to specifically today, John had contacted me, and I shared with him my concerns as a council member, and that's how he contacted me, and he asked me to please share those tonight in this open meeting with the APC. Normally, I probably would not have been as open and honest, but the petitioner asked me to share that this evening. So that's kind of the background, which you probably aren't aware of, but you need to know that. Okay.
And I want to say, when they first started having presentations at the council before they came to the APC years ago, the purpose of those, I guess, was twofold. The council kind of wanted to know what was going on. They also wanted to hear things so that they could make some serious comments for the petitioner. In other words, if the council's general opinion by, the majority of them or whatever was, no, we don't think this is the right thing at the right place, the petitioner can certainly move forward, but it gave the petitioner a better idea of whether it was going to be worth their time and money to do that. That was the whole purpose of it, those two things. And again, the petitioner has every right to proceed no matter what the council says. I know that there are some things, and Kevin has mentioned this, that staff will simply tell a petitioner who comes in, this isn't going to work. You can move forward, but we can tell you it's just the wrong thing, the wrong place, the wrong time, whatever the circumstances are. And he tells me that there are many that just don't even come before us because of that. which I think is a good thing because staff pretty much knows what the comp plan says and what the feelings are. And again, it's not a hard stop, but I think they are advising a petitioner of what time and effort they might be putting in and what the potential outcome would be. And I know that all of these petitioners go to the council before they get to us. So I think they have an idea of what's going on. And from what I've heard through the grapevine about this one, they were pretty much told that's probably, we'd like commercial there, you know, that's probably not gonna proceed. So I think our job as a plan commission is to make a recommendation, and thank God I don't have to make the final recommendation. I mean, that's up to the guys who make the big bucks on the council, and I don't really want the weight on me, but I think if something comes before us and we get a council report that, hey, this, you know, we're not supportive of this, that might give us pause to say, how hard are we going to work on this? How much are we going to put the petitioner through? Doesn't mean some people still can't support it and that we don't work on it, try to make it better, but if we had known early on that this was probably not going to be fruitful, maybe we wouldn't have had so many meetings and asked for so many things, because that's what I feel bad about. I don't like doing that to anybody. And I think going back to the comp plan and having that serious discussion at the first meeting about, is this the right thing at the right place? And we might all have different opinions, and that's fine, but I think those discussions are important for us to have.
Can I say something real quick? I don't doubt when Kristen said that the use was brought up early on. I know that it was, and I know that the use was brought up at our workshop meeting at the last gathering we had, and I don't remember who was here, who wasn't. And I know there was some concern amongst a few of us. I guess I just thought that everyone left there thinking, well, yeah, I understand, I'd much rather have commercial, but we've taken them too far down the path that, you know, we really just need to consider whether this is the right plan for this property. I did not leave that meeting thinking, there's going to be 2 or 3 people vote no because it's not commercial. And I'm sure they left that meeting as well thinking that. So it's just, I had no idea we were going to get here tonight and then still stick to this, well, no, I think we need to wait for commercial. And commercial would be great. But I go back to, and again, I haven't been on the APC for, but a year and a half. This agenda seems really light. And we have to ask ourselves, why are people not coming to Westfield at the same volume they used to come to Westfield? And then ask the question that if Fisher Homes goes in front of the city council, they get a no vote. Maybe Fisher Homes comes back, but will they? So why are we not getting the attention that we used to get?
I think that's a great question, Matt, and I'd kind of like to have a better idea of why. If it's true, you know, then why? And some of those things maybe we need to fix, and other things maybe that's just because we want to wait for what we think is appropriate. I don't know the answer either. We have a whole bunch of stuff on our agenda that's not moved forward. I'm not sure why either. I don't like that this went so long, but I also, a part of me thinks, okay, but early on, I think some of these issues were brought up by people that have more decision-making ability than I do.
I don't
Kevin,
disagree
I'm
that
sorry.
we need perhaps to factor in how it is that we got to the point where we are today, and to your point that we really need to pick whatever the recommendation is going to be based on what's best for Westfield, not that we feel like, wow, we let issues fester for too long and they've blown up at the wrong time.
That's why I
That
struggled
being
with this.
that being said, I don't see this as that catastrophic. Like Mike just said, I would really think that if somebody with a great commercial development had been on the agenda here, I'd have been all over that. That would have been terrific. I doubt we would have gotten anybody that would have been doing that on this parcel alone. It would have taken something that would have taken more land, so they'd be on 32, not just on Gray Road in all likelihood. And I don't know the answer to the question either about why are we so slow. There's probably a myriad of reasons.
I will
Possibly
say,
how we have done some of what we've done, could be factoring into it. But I saw this as something still that warranted approval, that they're going to bring us something that we have a community that is either here already that will want it, or it will bring us more people that will be good for Westfield. So I was in favor of it for those kinds of reasons, not overlooking the fact that there had been some history that was unfortunate the way it played out. But it was not something that was that significant in its impact that it would compel me to say, we're just not going to be able to, Jorge is not going to be able to send a favorable recommendation on this. I was still able to do that.
Real quick, I think 2 reasons why the agenda's a little light is because, to the point of it being light, it could have been a 10-minute meeting and it's 8 o'clock. So I think we talk a lot of just going in circles, being a dead horse, so on and so forth, wasting time at meetings, and to my second point, making petitioners jump through unnecessary hurdles. I think for them to come back to the last workshop meeting, which defeats the purpose of having the workshop meeting to begin with, to get everything out in that one workshop meeting, making them jump through unnecessary hurdles for something that wouldn't work to begin with, I just don't see the point in that. So again, I think we just all need to be better in being upfront with what our expectations are, and now that we have that workshop meeting, getting it all out there, they come back again, okay, maybe we lessen how much discussion we have because we've gotten it all out at that workshop meeting. Everyone knows our intentions, and we can vote within that 5-10 minute time frame, so that way we're not here for an hour plus.
Well, and Victor, I agree with you. I think we get stuck on little things. Everybody here is nice, we're all nice. And we want to fix things. That's kind of, I'm a fixer. I think most of you are fixers. You want to try to make it better. And I think that in some cases, by doing that, we do a disservice to the petitioner, because we talk about this detail and that detail, instead of sitting back and saying, you may not like what I'm going to say, but here are the big important things. Here's the elephant in the room. It's not maybe the height of the buildings along the trail. It's, it may be, we don't have a trail ordinance, and I don't think that what you're doing is good enough. Those are the big issues that I'm hoping we can talk about and work through. And to that point, I want to bring up that I had my quarterly meeting with the mayor this morning, and we were talking mostly about Michigan and his lake cottage and all the kind of things we have in common. But it came up to, why don't we have the Hoover Commission again? And he said, well, I think we should have that. It was originally called the Ordinance Review Committee. And it was a committee that looked at our UDO and talked about things that we needed to fix. And it's the kind of things that Kevin and Pam and the rest of the staff has been compiling a list of for at least a couple of years. Here's this little fix we need to do here and there. And he said, well, I'd like you to have that committee again. He said, I'd like to have either a city council member or a plan commission member run it with staff. And we talked about whether that would be during a workshop meeting or another separate meeting. And I'm sure, Kevin, this is the first time he's heard this, because Andy and I just had this discussion this morning. So I don't mean to drop it on you, but I wanted to give you a heads up. And talked about maybe the workshop meeting should be more for those discussion items that Andy, that the mayor brought to us. How big do we want to be? How much commercial do we want? Where do we want it? Those kind of things. And that some simple ordinance fixes, and they're not always simple, I understand that, staff smiling, maybe could be at least worked through at a Hoover Commission type meeting, so that when it came to us, at least a lot of the questions would have been asked beforehand, and maybe it would be a quicker thing for us to look at. So anyway, sorry, Kevin, that I tried to call you, but I thought, well, let's just get it out here. And I know that's something you wanted to do for a long time, is to get some of these things fixed. And Andy said, we got all this downtime. And I said, well, let's make use of it. So
Cindy, you looked like you had something that you wanted to jump into, but I think we segued into
That
a
kinda took us
different
off topic.
conversation. Are you still interested in making
We don't
a
get to
comment,
talk
or
that
was I wrong about that?
I just wanted to let people know that there was not a surprise for this petitioner. This petitioner heard our comments before they ever filed that I'm aware of. So they chose to
Exactly.
take that risk in terms of whether they wanted to move forward. So there wasn't like a big surprise. And as we've seen, it was a split vote because there's things that are good and bad about this, and they want to take that chance, and that's up to them. Given the fact that that was going to move forward like it did tonight, you know, luckily we got in a better position if it does pass. And just because we think that it might not pass, and that's based on the feedback that they've received from the council, you know what I mean, to date. So it's not some secret thing, or that, you know, it doesn't matter what we do here, because it does. And that recommendation, one way or another, does mean something. What we do face is an issue when we have a split vote, and that also does not help a counselor who's on the fence with a vote, right? So again, I just wanted to let people know that there was not a bunch of surprises. The petitioner chose to do what they did. We didn't exact that. So I just want to be upfront with y'all, and to also say, I think the reason we're not seeing at least as many residential proposals, I'll speak for myself. I've gotten several who are interested in mostly projects that don't fit our comp plan or are outside of our current established limit that we have said that we wanted to stay within in our comp plan. There's been a variety of issues that I know at least I have not been as receptive to some of these proposals, and I've been vocal about it. So, and that's just me, and I'm one of 7, but they have met with me, different developers, and I always tell them, though, I preface it with I'm one of 7 or I'm one of 9. And so, you know, maybe that's a confusing message to send, because it does say, well, I don't like it, but someone else might. So I just can't in good conscience speak for our whole plan commission or our whole council. So just to let you guys know, that's how that goes down when I meet with developers.
Thank you.
One of the things that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. if you have something.
No,
I want to
this-
go back to the process of the workshop is what I want to talk about. So go ahead, let's
Okay,
finish this, because
just,
I think part of that's part of the problem.
Yeah, just a quick thing. One of the topics for a workshop could be, what do we have available for infill? I mean, everybody talks about we really want to do infill instead of going out here or there or wherever. And maybe we don't have much, maybe we do, but I think a good topic at some point would be, what do we have available for infill, and what do we think is appropriate to go there? And then that gives developers, whether they be commercial or residential, here you have it. You know, there's already infrastructure there. We're trying to infill that.
So it's pretty easy to see the infill. You
Yeah.
look at the map, and there's a lot of areas that are just dirt.
I've really been
We need to
begging
fill
these
those.
developers that are coming, that have projects that I think might make sense for the community, to find those areas where we do need infill. And I've really been begging them to try and do things there. And oftentimes, the land price is so outrageous that it's just not doable for them. That's been a big hindrance.
Just real quickly to jump in on this topic, the comp plan kind of dictates, is not the right word, outlines preferred land uses in different areas of our community, correct? I think we all agree on that. When we're looking at individual project proposals, though, I think there's a lot of different factors that go into that. And we talked about parcel specific or area specific, but really it all kind of comes down to, is there a willing seller, right, or a willing developer?
Yeah, you need
that
both.
we, city, anybody in the city has really no control over. So, I mean, I think it's good probably to know where those infill opportunities are, but I don't know that we can sit here and dictate where those things occur, because we have no control over the market, the owners, the sellers, those kinds of things. I'm just not sure how fruitful that will be. I mean,
Okay, that's a good point.
All right.
Bob, can we talk a little bit about how we think this workshop's going? We've had a couple of those, and to Matt, you know, was talking a moment ago that he doesn't recall Cindy's bringing this up in the first meeting, and that is really fair. I know why Matt doesn't recall that, because Cindy brought it up, and this is with all due respect to John Dabasewicz, because he is outstanding at his job, and we all know that. I mean, he's one of the best salespeople I think that anybody would ever encounter. So I just want to compliment him. But when Cindy brought that up, it was like, I've judged a lot of high school debate, and I felt like we were in a debate all of a sudden, and he debated her back on why she wasn't correct about that and why it should be residential. And everybody moved on. And I brought up a couple points in that meeting, and I had the same thing happen to me, and you probably don't recall what I said either, which I carried on, and actually I didn't go back into it again tonight, on this wall down the trail and the amenities and some other issues that night. I guess for me, I really would prefer not to see workshops as a debate, like I'm back in the high school debate competition. I think it's a time where we share information, we share perspectives, and we try to kind of build with the petitioner. And if it's a debate, we're back to they're selling us, and we're not having a conversation about what might work on the parcel and all coming together. Because right then and there, when Cindy said that, it hit me, and I thought, oh my gosh, I should have dug into this more, which I did after the meeting, and I think it made me more informed for my decision. I'm not judging anybody else's, but for my decision, it helped me. And I feel like that's what the workshop needs to be, because at that moment, I felt like, well, why don't we start talking about maybe a mixed-use project and how this could connect to that other parcel, and how can we preserve that middle parcel as still being general office, and transition away from those neighbors to the south. And I would like to work on things like that and in that workshop, if the petitioner's open to it, so we do find a good collaborative solution for everybody. But this one, you know, tonight, that was just too much for me to give away the whole parcel to residential, and that's the way I voted. But I guess, Kevin, I'm bringing all this up from a standpoint, and then they came back, and we still had the same concerns and with the commercial, and it was mentioned in the first one. How do we do this? I'm bringing this up as an overall conversation topic, not to keep us here until 10 o'clock, but we've had a couple of these sessions. I guess for me personally, they're not working the way I had hoped they would work. I feel like we're still here giving feedback, they rebuttal back. We're not collaborating for good solutions, in my opinion, so.
Well, we've had two.
Yeah, I know, it's early, that's why I'm
Pretty
just,
small sample size.
Yes.
it is.
So we're still learning how this works. I guess I would a little bit disagree that I think, I mean, I don't want to use the word debate, I don't want to use the word selling or whatever, but your job as a plan commission is to react to a proposal. It's not necessarily to come to some sort of consensus, I don't believe, on how to make a project work. If there's a threshold issue for you that's like, I can't get past this, I will vote no until this component of this proposal changes, I think that's absolutely fair to let them know up front. And I think that's what we've heard tonight, right? And I do think, I agree, I think this commercial comp plan discussion came up, maybe not, I wouldn't say early in the process, but it certainly tonight was not the first time it came up. I think that's fair. I think it's been a few meetings now that this has at least been publicly discussed. Now, the emphasis on whether or not that was a threshold issue for the commission or certain, individuals, I'm not sure how clearly that was
You're right.
communicated to the petitioner. So in this instance, I don't know. If that's the issue, that's like, no, you can't get past it, then I just think it's fair to let them know, right? Look, you can file, we can't stop you from filing. You don't meet the comp plan, or you don't meet whatever XYZ expectation of our community is. until we get there, I'm a no vote. And I think that's
Kevin, I
probably
think-
fair,
I-
but
I think that's great. I think the word threshold is important because, as I say, we're all nice people and everybody tries to fix this and that. And I want to say, wait a minute, but is there a threshold for each one of us? And I think I did that with Pulte when they came in for that development on 161st Street. I pretty much said, my threshold is 2-acre lots and custom homes. And and I felt bad, you don't like to, but I think it's only fair if we, as individuals, have thresholds on certain things based on the comprehensive plan, that we say those. And I don't think we do as good a job as we could, and I think that's a disservice to the petitioner.
and if the petitioner wants to carry on knowing that with their proposal, I mean, at least they know, right?
Right.
Eyes wide open, right? They know what they're getting themselves into. They know they may not get enough votes, but that's their decision. And I don't think it's incumbent upon us or you to make the project work because it may not be a project they want to do. One
Well,
that
they
we're
may flip
happy
it to
with may not
somebody
be
else.
one that they want to do. And that's
Right.
okay to say no. That's fine. Then another person comes in and tries to do something
Right.
that does fit the
And a
plan.
legal question. Are we publicly allowed to say, I can't support this because such and such? Is that okay? Well, Kevin just said if we don't support something, or we say, here's my threshold, I can't support this because of this and this. Is it okay to say that before a vote? I mean, we kind of dance around just saying,
I mean,
pretty
if you don't,
straight out.
you can say your reason for why you don't support it.
okay. Because I think we dance around that a lot.
Yeah, and I think to kind of everything that's been mentioned right now, to that point, if there is a certain threshold that someone has, if I will not vote for this because of this, then don't lead the petitioner on down a trail of, oh, but I like this, oh, but I like this. But all along, you were going to vote no because it's not what you intend for the land or whatever it is, you know? So I'm not saying it the best way, but just not trying to lead developers and petitioners on of, okay, this is my absolute threshold, but this, but this, but this.
That's kind of the comment I was queuing up to get to here, is there's a hierarchy that we each have, whether we think about it or not in our decisions. And before we get to, does the brick need to be 32 inches or 34 inches? Is this a commercial or is this a residential? And we ought to be able to get to those first decisions individually without even seeing the presentation. Somebody ought to be able to point to I'm looking at the GIS, I don't know what else has up here, and say, I want to put residential there, and we can do that before we've even seen it. And I think it was Jenny's point, we tend to get into that fixer mentality and detailed. We're not architects, and we're not supposed to be doing architecture during this meeting. We keep getting ourselves into that trap. So those threshold items, I think, or decisions would come out sooner if we just kind of went in. We don't get to make incremental votes, right? We don't get to vote first. Okay, is it a good use? Yes or no? Okay, fine, we passed that. Now, is it the right density? Okay, fine. Now, is it the right look? We're not doing that. It's all once at the end. But we should be able to deliver that feedback in that hierarchy to stop it sooner. And I think just to pull together all the comments, that's what I'm hearing. There's an order of magnitude of these decisions that we're skipping right past sometimes.
Said much better than I, so thank you.
All right. I think we've exhausted this. And it is now 20 after 8 or thereabouts.
I just have one other quick comment, that I got feedback that people would really like to have that workshop session on a live feed like we do in this building. Is there that was a community ask, and I said I would ask.
The only way to do that right now is to move those meetings here.
And
We
then-
don't have that capability at City Services.
So the process is you're filming us and then uploading it the next day?
That's
Is
correct.
that
Yep.
how that's working? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So if y'all want to move them back here, we can do that for that purpose, but
That's the
We
capability of
currently,
that?
yeah, we currently don't have the technology there to live stream.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
It's something that IT is working on. There's no timeline. I mean, I think they're working on getting the necessary equipment to do that, so.
Let's move on to the downtown update.
I could take another 40 minutes on that, but I won't, Bob.
Please don't. Because I'm going to start banging this.
We're moving along with the downtown proposal. Last week, we had a good opportunity to go through really the entire proposal as it stands today and look at the line item pricing. And when I say we, that was Mike and Jonathan and I. And so tomorrow, we're having an entire team meeting to go through that and share with everyone and collect feedback. I think there's some areas of opportunity where we can make it just as fabulous with spending a few more dollars and then being responsible with the dollars spent through that corridor. So we're going to work on that tomorrow. The timeline moved out, it's moved back. I don't know how to say that. Like, we got more time. Now that time came back 90 days. So that was quite a jump to needing a lot of these items sooner. So we're going to do it. We're going to figure it out. And we'll be back with this commission and also with council fairly soon to show you everything of what the concept's going to look like. Any questions? Okay, thanks.
All right. City Council.
I will do that. The council met October 24th. The confirmatory resolution for the ERA, Economic Revitalization Area for a medical building at Grand Millennium, was approved. A resolution concerning tax abatements for Sagility was approved. An additional appropriation was approved for basically police and fire building design fees. That'll be forthcoming. The 2023 budget was approved. A capital asset reporting policy was approved, as well as a policy amending the materiality threshold. An ordinance approving a GO bond and appropriation was approved for $5.8 million with a 2-year payback for a new fire engine, 181st Street roundabout, Cherry Street Bridge replacement, which is needed for the Union Square project, and initial design fees for expansion of 191st Street. And the council redistricting plan was approved. We introduced an ordinance creating term limits for certain city elected offices, mayor, clerk treasurer, and council. Again, that was an introduction only. That was it.
Very good, thank you. There was no BZA meeting between our last meeting and now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The long and eagerly and anticipated plat committee that we officially appointed actually met, and we trained.
Are you the liaison?
Since I'm the only one from this body that's on it, it sort of became a default that I would.
Congratulations.
Oh, I was absolutely thrilled.
That's great.
Yeah. So there isn't much of a report because we all got to know each other, and we probably had the longest meeting we're gonna have because it was like an hour and a quarter to discuss all of what it is that is the responsibilities of that body and answer everybody's questions. We got a group that should be able to work pretty well together. We have a meeting coming up for the library plat next week, and we're going to have some measure, I guess. I haven't seen if we had another response back from Justin Wiley. But I'm good for 3:30, at least I think I am. So we're working out a couple little kinks here on how to make sure that we've crafted the agenda like we do for this body. When we have the pre-APC meeting, we're gonna have a pre-plat, but hopefully it'll be short and we'll actually find a time that works for everybody that can repeat. So, more to come after the next meeting. Community development, what do you have for us?
Yeah, just a couple quick updates. One, next workshop meeting, we will continue with the inventory presentations that we started last time. I don't believe we will have any PUDs to discuss. I don't think so. And then we had planned on going through our first UDO patch update, but now if that's something that we want to start doing with a different group, we're happy to shift gears and go that direction too. So we can maybe.
Yeah, I think that's up to you guys. I think if there's time, throw it into,
Okay.
I mean, we just need to get it done, and however we can do that, if it's a separate committee meeting.
Or we use it for the how big are we gonna be type questions that we keep kicking down the road too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think those questions will kind of come after we get through the data presentations. I think those are kind of intended to be kind of some support information for having those conversations.
Right. The mayor listed like 3 things, and the same that he, that he presented to us.
Yep. So.
And I have a meeting with him tomorrow morning. We'll probably not talk about Michigan other than the fact that, we'll maybe talk more about Ohio State and Indiana playing this Saturday.
Oh, you could talk about dogs. He has a new puppy.
So we'll
Mayor
figure
has a
out
puppy?
between now and then if we're
Oh my
going to
gosh.
Golden Retriever.
present the UDO, or not even present, bring the UDO draft update to the full Plan Commission in the workshop, or if we're going to pivot and create another a group, which is fine. So we'll have to talk about that internally and how that affects timing. But anyway, that's kind of where we are. We do have a draft kind of ready to go, ready to discuss. So not ready to introduce yet, but to have some initial discussion
All right.
for some of the easier items.
We're looking for a motion to adjourn. I think we've completed all of our tasks and then
Motion
some.
to adjourn?
So I have a motion from Victor McCarty.
Second.
And a seconded
He can
by
have it.
Matt Deck. We'll do this by a voice vote. Everybody in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there anybody opposed? If not, there's none. 8:26 PM, we are adjourned.